Hi, I'm Guy Harris, and this is Talk Like a Leader. This week's episode is titled, How You Listen Matters as Much as How You Talk. The point of this episode is related to an application idea of the DISC model. Now, there are several episodes in the Talk Like a Leader history about how to use, understand, and apply the DISC model to become a more effective communicator. And many of those episodes are, I'd say, really more applicable to how you say things or how you phrase things or words you use or how you look at situations from an outgoing communication perspective. Outgoing meaning leaving you, going out from you communication as the initiator of the communication. And one of the things to consider is that applying the DISC model also applies to how we listen. Now, I own a website with my friend and partner, Kevin Eikenberry. It's discpersonalitytesting.com. If you'd like more information about how the DISC model works in general, that's a great place to go. We have assessments, we have tools, we have learning resources, we have a blog. So there are resources there to learn more about the DISC model. There are many episodes in the Talk Like a Leader archive about how to use the DISC model. Today's specific application is about how it affects the way we listen. And the idea is that not only can we use the DISC model as a way to adjust our words, our body language, our tone to how we communicate with other people so that we phrase the message in a way that's easier for them to hear and accept and receive and act on. We can also use the DISC model as a way to filter the words and body language and tone that comes back to us. And to make the point, I'll share experiences I have with two people that are close to me. One is my wife, Sandra, and the other is a friend of mine, Carl. Carl and I have known each other since the late 90s. So we've known each other for quite a while. We have a good history. Not quite as long as I have with my wife, but a pretty good history anyway. So first, my wife. My wife happens to have a lot of dominant traits. Both dominant and inspiring traits. That means she tends to move fast. She talks fast. She's rather intense. Her emotions tend to be on the surface. She shows her emotional state very clearly with her facial expressions, her hand gestures, her body language. It just shows very outwardly, much more than me. And her natural energy level, her natural intensity level is significantly higher than mine. So there are times that that intensity triggers for me, because my natural intensity isn't that high, it triggers an interpretation that she's somehow angry. Now, earlier in our marriage, this was much more prevalent before I understood her better. And today, after 30 plus years, there are still times when I'm hungry or I'm tired or I'm stressed or I'm distracted by something else that I'm not really on my game, and my filter interprets her intensity as anger. Now, the challenge with me interpreting her intensity as anger when it's not anger, when it's just passion for a topic or a concern for an issue or something like that, is that if I interpret her as being angry, then actually what it does for me is it makes me angry. And then I respond in a way that makes the situation worse rather than better. And on those times when I remember, oh, she's just much more intense than you, much more passionate than you, this is just her energy and passion, then I don't get angry. And when I don't get angry, I receive that energy and passion in a way that allows me to hear what she's saying in a much clearer way. And because I don't get angry, I can respond in a reasonable, rational way, and I don't make the situation work. So when I apply the DISC model to hearing her through the lens of how she naturally speaks, I better interpret her intended message rather than apply my personal interpretation to her message. On the other side, I have my buddy Carl. Now, Carl is just about the gentlest, nicest guy you'd ever meet. In fact, if you'd like to know Carl better, he has been a guest of mine on some episodes of Talk Like a Leader. Well, Carl has more supportive traits, significantly more supportive traits than I do. I have some pretty strong supportive traits as part of my secondary traits. Carl has pretty strong supportive traits as his primary trait. He is just naturally more gentle than I am. He is naturally more indirect than I am. He has a much kinder and softer way of saying things than I do. Well, there are times when he's under stress or under pressure, he has a very strong desire to keep the peace and to make the situation better by not being confrontational, which means he can become more gentle and more indirect in some situations when he's under stress. Well, if I have an idea in mind and I'm trying to get his engagement or get his agreement on an issue or gather his perspective on something along those lines, if I'm not listening through the lens of how Carl naturally speaks and how Carl sees the situation, I might interpret his lack of direct engagement or lack of direct comment or indirect statement as a sign that he actually agrees with me, when in fact, he's just trying not to fight with me. And then I might go forward thinking I have Carl's agreement and buy-in when in fact I don't. I have kind of backed him into a corner to agree with me when he doesn't really agree. And if we're trying to work on a project together, it might invite him to participate at sort of a bare minimum energy level where he's not really bought into the idea. And in that case, because my intensity level is a bit higher than Carl's, I can misread his lack of intensity as agreement or buy-in when that's not really what he's saying. He's just saying, Guy, I just don't want to fight. Now, here's the point. How you listen matters as much as how you talk. To become a really effective leadership communicator, we have to look past the surface level message, get comfortable and skillful at trying to see the situation from the other person's perspective through the lens or filter or approach to how they would say things, and be careful not to attach our personal filter or our personal way of doing it. If I were you, here's how I would say it, or you're saying in a way that would mean I was angry or agreeing if I said it that way, therefore that's what you mean. Attaching our body language, our tone, our intensity level, our agreement level to their words, phrases, body language, and tone. We have to be careful that as we listen to other people, we want to attempt as best we can. I don't know that any of us will ever be perfect at this. It is one of those kind of aspirational goals idea, though. I'd like to listen to the other person through the filter, through the lens of how they're saying it and how that choice of body language, tone, and word choice conveys a message from how they are attempting to convey it, rather than how I would say it if I were them. Now, if you can learn how to listen through the DISC filter, listen to how other people say things, attaching to the best of your ability their intention and their purpose for saying it. If you can do that, you can talk like a leader.
This has been the Talk Like a Leader podcast. You can listen to this show every week wherever you get your podcast. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm Guy Harris, and thanks for listening.